We have this cool technology that it's AI that can help us to make our lives better. And in terms of companies, they can work faster, they can be more efficient, they can reduce costs. I think overall, of course, technology is going to evolve, but sometimes I have that feeling that we have technology of the future to resolve problems for the present. There are three main components, right? So from one side, you have to work on the strategy, the people. From the other side, you have to define the process, and finally is the technology. Probably the biggest challenge is how fast this technology it's moving, right?
Welcome to the Moonshot Podcast. AI is moving fast, but the real story isn't just about new models. It's how they're starting to think, act, and reshape the world around us. Joining me today is Eduardo Ordax, Principal Go-to-Market Lead for Generative AI at AWS across EMEA. He works with some of the world's largest organizations, and he's one of the few people with a front row seat to what's actually working behind the scenes. In this episode, we uncover the AI talent wars, from $100 million offers at Meta to how smart companies are upskilling from within, why Agentic AI and partial autonomy are already shaping how teams work, where most organizations go wrong with their GenAI strategy, infrastructure, and measuring ROI, how solo builders, open models, and vibe coders are redefining what it means to build software, and the skills that matter most for today's workforce and the next generation. Whether you're a founder, developer, investor, or just trying to understand where the future is heading, this conversation is fast-paced, fact-driven, and full of real insights. As a quick disclaimer before we get started, Eduardo and I both work at AWS in AI-related roles, and everything shared in this episode reflects our personal views, not those of the company. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Moonshot Podcast. I'm your host, Tatjana Pandurevic. Let's dive in. Eduardo, thank you for joining the Moonshot Podcast. It's great to have this conversation with you. I know we were just talking, we were meant to do this in person in Madrid. I'm back in Sydney, so we're doing it virtually, but I'm just as excited to get into all things AI with you.
Yeah, same for me. I really would like to have this conversation in person, but I'm sure in the near future. We are not so far, right? You are just in the other side of the world, so it's pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly. Just on the complete other side of the world. But I think a good place to get started is when you're talking to people that are outside the technology world, how do you explain what you do every day?
Well, it's complicated. At least right now, they have some kind of interest about what I'm doing because 2 years ago, nobody was asking me. Even when I was saying like, hey, I'm working in the AI space, they even didn't have any idea what did I mean by AI. But yeah, I guess I try to don't give like too much details because otherwise it's going to be overwhelming. But it's pretty much like, hey, we have this cool technology that it's AI that can help us to make our lives better. And in terms of companies, they can work faster, they can be more efficient, they can reduce costs. And I'm just trying to help companies around the world in the way to harness the power of AI. So. But again, I don't try to give so many details.
That's nice and simple. Have you always wanted to work in technology? How did you get into the position that you're in right now?
Yeah, so I have a technical background, right? I'm computer scientist. I was coding at the beginning of my career. I was working as a pure developer. I remember those days, coding in Java and so on. But then I jump into the world of sales, business development, always very close to tech companies. I worked for so many years at Vodafone, and even it was there when I transitioned more into this space of data and AI. It was more like data in the past, not so much AI. From one position, I transition into another all the time in these, roles close to data and AI. And 3 years ago, I joined AWS in this specific space on AI, working as a business developer, and having a lot of fun. To be honest, I mean, I consider myself so lucky to be living this moment in the specific time in a company like AWS, because I mean, like I've never seen something similar before. I remember in like the old days with the internet. I remember connecting through this modem with this very weird sound, and like the line of my house, of my parents' house, was all the time busy because I was connected to the internet. But that time, I know it was like quite, like, hey, this is amazing. You can be, like, in touch with everyone around the world. But I don't think it's even the same. I think, like, AI, it's taking a different level. So I consider myself super lucky too, because at the end of the day, I used to say, like, like, my work is also my hobby at the same time, and that's a lot of fun, to be honest.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I've often compared AI to the internet, but it's much more than that. And just the rapid pace of net new development that all feel like a step change after a step change every couple of months. And there's lots of news around companies and tools and infrastructure and all these developments. For someone listening that doesn't know quite what Amazon does in this space, how would you describe Amazon's AI strategy and approach, and how it's resonating with organizations out in the market?
Yeah, so Amazon is a super big company, right? And even many times people, they don't understand the difference between Amazon ads, between AWS, and so on. So it's funny that when people is asking me like, hey, where you're working, and I say like, hey, I'm working at, well, if I say AWS, many people doesn't know, so I have to say like, okay, I'm working at Amazon. Ah, okay, you're working in logistic, and it's not really, right? But I think, like, in terms of AI, the nice thing about Amazon in general as a company, right, is like since the very beginning, we have been using data and ML in all the different, like, parts of our value chain, right? When you go to our fulfillment center, when we do demand forecasting, when we implement recommendations on our marketplace, everything is powered by ML, but because we have like very good data since the very beginning, right? So I think it's part of our DNA, and the good thing I think about AWS or Amazon is like the same technology AWS has created for AI is the same technology that we are using at Amazon. So the recommendation engine that is in our marketplace is the one that we can sell to our customers, right? So I think, like, when we are selling and when we're telling to our customers like, hey, we are using this technology first, I think it's a way to, like, provide trust to the customer, right? Because it's like, hey, we are the first one using it. And in terms of, like, a strategy, I think in terms of AI, um, we always say that we have to work backwards from the customer, right? So I mean, like, I don't care if it's AI, if it's GenAI, if it's agents or whatever technology. It's about how we can provide value to the customer. And you need to identify which is the business problem and working backwards to how to address the business problem. Sometimes it will be with AI, and many other times it will be like a completely different manner, right? So I think in terms of this boom of GenAI, what we understood at AWS, it was like, hey, we need to provide the widest choice to the customers, and that means getting access to a lot of different models from different providers like Anthropic, like Meta, like Mistral, our own foundation models, and many others. But at the end of the day, like, the model is just one small part of the process, right? Yeah, you need to get access to these models, but how you are going to handle hallucinations, how you are going to evaluate the quality of the output, how you are going to optimize the latency, or how you are going to reduce the cost, because these models sometimes they could be like super expensive. So there are like a lot of different steps within the process, and you need to have the tools and the capabilities to make sure, like, hey, it's not only about building cool prototypes, but about like transforming your organization. I think this is also our strategy with Amazon Bedrock. That is our platform, like, to build on top of GenAI. So it's not only giving access to the models, but giving access to the entire ecosystem where you can orchestrate all these different components. And I think so far it's working pretty well. We have like a lot of customer stories, enjoying a lot, building with Bedrock. And what I like the most probably is like, it's not complicated. I mean, like, this is not something that is only limited to, like, ML engineers or AI engineers or data scientists. Any developer can go there and just through simple API calls, they can start, like, building and creating cool stuff. So I think it's been quite an amazing product, and our customers, they're enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just taking a lens, when you're looking at models in particular, they tend to take a lot of time in the press, and especially when new models are released, like we've just seen with Grok 4, but also Claude Sonnet 4 and Opus 4, the latest ChatGPT model when it was released, Gemini 2.5 Pro. They get a lot of time in the press. Where do you think most of the progress is happening with how organizations are actually deploying AI? Is it with models? Is it at the infra layer? Is it with software development or something else?
Well, I think it's a bit of everything. I mean, like all the different layers of the stack, they are important. I mean, like if you don't have like enough compute, you won't have these models. I think Elon Musk was saying yesterday that they have used 10 times the compute they used to train Grok 3 for Grok 4, right? So you can, or this can give you an idea about, like how this compute is increasing over time. So of course, compute, it's super important. Having access to these GPUs, it's super important. And there are like many players working in this space. Of course, all the hyperscalers, but there are also many other players. The LLMs, sometimes I have the feeling that it's like, like competition. It's like the space competition, right? Like, hey, you have to be there or you have to be the first one to reach the moon, right? So I feel sometimes with LLMs it's pretty much the same. There is not a huge difference. You mentioned like a Grok, you mentioned GPT, you mentioned Claude, and so on. I don't think there is a huge difference across all these models. I think pretty much they have very similar capabilities, and the difference we are just talking about, like a very small number of points in terms of accuracy for specific tasks. Well, some models they are better for coding, some models they are better for talking, some models they are better for like understanding, and most of the times the use cases they are pretty straightforward, right? So you even don't need to have like the latest state of the art model. But it's also about like the perception of the market, and the perception of the market is like, hey, you need to be there, you need to be creating the best models in the market, because it's kind of also, it's also part of this geopolitical environment, right? When you need to lead this. I've tested all of them, and as I said all the time, depending on the use case, you will select one or the other. And when like even when the models they are behaving very similar, maybe you need to prioritize, of course, latency and cost. So if I can do the same thing with a model that is going to be lighter, that is going to be much cheaper, I will take this model. At the end of the day, I think this is good for the users. I was posting about this yesterday, right? The more competition we see, the better to create, like better and better models for the users. I'm not sure how far we are going with the current technology that we have today. I mean, like by current technology, I mean like the approach. To be honest, there is not like huge difference about how all these AI labs they are training models. The approach is pretty much the same, because I mean, like the foundations they are pretty much the same. All of them, like they are using the transformer architecture that it was released by Google. So maybe what everyone is expecting to see in the near future is like, hey, a shift of paradigm, right? Like, hey, someone comes with a completely new approach and we see something different. But still, I think there is still room for improvement across LLMs. They are, of course, super intelligent for some stuff, but for many others, they have proved that they are still not there. I mean, like I was reading this morning a funny post with, like a picture of a hand with 6 fingers, and they were asking Grok, how many fingers do you have in the hand? And it was still saying 5 fingers, right? So I think there's still, for very simple tasks, there is still room for improvement. But I think overall it's great to have this, like every couple of months, new release, new capabilities. And I'm not tired to see this. So I wish this is going to continue for a long time.
I think in AI, it's like in any other market. It's good when there's lots of competition. So I think it's always good to see model development happening from lots of different providers, because it really drives accountability and innovation at the same time. What models are you using the most every day?
So I'm a heavy user about many different models and many different applications. I'm using a lot ChatGPT. I'm using a lot Claude. I'm using a lot Mistral. Especially I like Mistral, for example, when I'm talking or when I'm trying to do something in Spanish. I know, for example, for European language, it's working pretty well. DeepSeek, what I like about DeepSeek is like you can see the trace about, like all the chain of thought. And it's also pretty nice because you can identify sometimes, like hallucinations and so on. So I'm using DeepSeek a lot, and I'm expecting anytime soon they release the new version. But again, GPT, Claude, DeepSeek, Mistral. I'm using Perplexity a lot for research. I think it's pretty good, to be honest. So if I want to, I don't know, write about something or I need to identify information, I know I'm not using Google anymore. So I'm just going to Perplexity. I try to run the research, and then I start, like asking questions about the research. And Manus AI as well, for, like running specific actions or any specific plans. I think Manus is working super well. Even the other day, I was testing the new capability for doing presentations, and I was quite surprised because even I'm so picky when I'm doing presentations. I always like to have, because I'm doing a lot of talks, and I like to have, like perfect presentation. But even to give me some ideas, I think it was working pretty well. So I mean, like I'm using AI every day for many different tasks. And yeah, I try to use all of them, because something that is super important. I mean, like if you use only one application or you're using only one model, it's like you are giving all your information. And all these models, like the more they used to learn from you, right? So the more you are using, for example, ChatGPT, they have the memory, so identifies better your intents, how you write, what do you want to do. So if you are using or you are stuck to one single model, of course you are going to see big difference when you are using the others, because the others is like they don't know you very well, right? So I think it's good to diversify and use many others. But yeah, I think these are my top options to go every day.
Yeah, it's a really good point on the more you use a model, the more useful I found it also becomes, just because of that element of picking up context about you. And so initially, when it was OpenAI that had the frontier models, I started using GPT a lot more initially. And I noticed over time I started deviating to GPT, but it was because I had provided it so much information over time. And the more that I started doing that with Claude and some other models for different use cases, I also find they become more useful over time. You have the models. How important is prompting and the way that you're actually interacting with the models?
Yeah, so I think prompting is super important. I've done a lot of, like different jokes about prompting, prompt engineers, in the way that, like I think in the near future, well, I think already everyone soon know how to prompt an LLM. And that's a reality, because based on the quality of your prompt, the better or the worse is going to be the answer, because at the end of the day, you are using the same model, right? So the better you prompt, of course, the data that you're putting there, but the better the prompt, the better is going to be the output. And there are like many different techniques to improve your prompts. Even, for example, for me, it was super useful, and I still use it a lot. The Anthropic console, you can go there, and there is an option to optimize prompts and also to create prompts from scratch. So you just give like a very, like a short task, like, hey, I want to do a summary of the documents, and how Claude is going to identify this task, and it's going to elaborate a much better prompt, like, hey, you define the role, you define the goal, you define how the output is going to be, the examples that you want to include. So I think prompt engineering, and even context engineering that everyone is talking about, because it's not only a prompt, but it's going to be RAG, it's going to be the tools, it's going to be like almost everything. But I think prompt engineering is going to be something that everyone needs to know how to do it, because at the end of the day, everyone is going to be talking to GenAI assistants, agents, LLM, and I think it's super important. And it's pretty much like us, like human, right? So if somebody's asking me like, hey, Eduardo, can you do this? If they don't give me any kind of instruction, maybe I won't do it like super well. So if they give me instructions, if they give me examples, if they give me, like, hey, we have done this before, and like you have to obtain this kind of results, for me it's going to be much easier. So for the LLMs, it's pretty much the same. I really enjoy, like my transition, because still I'm like I'm a developer Well, I used to be a developer, but I was not like very good developer, to be honest. Coding was never one of my strengths. So that's why I like it a lot, prompting, because at the end of the day, you can put almost everything there, right? And you can see how you can obtain much better results. So I think it's going to be like super important. Also, LLMs, they are right now more standard in the way that there is not huge difference how you prompt to an LM to one LM versus to another. So I think, yeah, it's going to be like key for everyone.
Yeah, I think there's a few things there. Overall, what AI is doing is definitely democratizing technology. You talked a little bit about development there. It's making it much easier just through natural human language and prompting to be able to do what was impossible if you didn't have development skills just 12 months ago. Providing style, tone, and examples helps significantly. Something that I've really been deliberate about and thinking about a lot as I've been using models recently is how to completely take out bias from my prompts. So when I'm particularly doing research or analytical type work, how I actually frame a prompt with the models absolutely skews the response that it provides. And so I'm constantly rereading and checking the way that I'm asking a question to make it as objective as possible so that in no way I at all alter the type of responses that I'm getting, because the models absolutely, they sway to your type of thinking.
Absolutely right. And after using many models, it's very easy sometimes to identify, the model that you are using behind the scenes. I mean, like sometimes if they give me like 4 or 5 different texts, many times I can identify like, hey, this was written by a human. This was written by an LLM that actually it could be like a GPT, or it could be Claude, or it could be another, because there's also, some style that, like being, if you give the instructions, you can identify it. But yeah, it's absolutely key. Yeah.
I have to ask you about Grok 4 just because it was released only a couple of days ago. What are your thoughts? Every time we've talked a little bit about models, when they're released, there's so much hype out in the market. And this one has again topped all the benchmarks, or most of the leading AI benchmarks. I saw a quote that it's potentially better than PhD level in every subject, no exceptions. This was by the Grok team. What's your thoughts on Grok 4?
Well, I think like it deserves, first of all, XAI a lot of credit for what they've done in just a year. I mean, like if you compare against Google, against Anthropic, against Meta, and of course against OpenAI, they have been working on models. They have been releasing models for the last 30 months, 30 plus months. And XAI, they started just a year ago. They released Grok, then Grok 2, then Grok 3. And when I was reading like Grok 4 was going to release, it was like, hey, this will be a joke. I mean, like Grok 3 was released just a few months ago, right? So I think it's pretty impressive what they've done with Grok. And also the, like a record time to build this cluster to train their models. I mean, like it's simply amazing. And as I was saying at the beginning, right, when I read the amount of compute that they have used for Grok 4 comparing to Grok 3, it's simply like, hey, I really can understand it, right? In terms of performance, I cannot say a lot because I was just doing like very small tasks and very simple stuff. But I've seen some examples, for example, with coding, just putting the coding directly to Grok, and the performance was pretty good. And also during the presentation yesterday, they were saying like one of the main goals for them is that they want to have Grok one, if not the best model for coding at the moment, right? So I think it was pretty impressive. In terms of the benchmarks, sometimes, like, or at least I don't trust it anymore. And because many of these model providers, they are training their models on, like these specific data sets for the benchmark. And like, for example, I think it's a good example. It's Anthropic, right? That typically they don't use these data sets to match the benchmarks. And when you see the leaderboard, maybe they are not at the top positions, but the reality is like everyone is using them, right? So it's like, hey, okay, it's not the best model, but why is the reason like everyone is still using, for example, Claude for coding? Probably because it's, like for the users, once they use the model, they realize that it's the best one. But I think overall, XAI is doing like such an amazing job. Again, I think this is good for the users having more competition. It's better at the end. You need unique model choice. Probably XAI right now needs to take the next step, right? Um, Grok was, like embedded within XAI and all the ecosystem there. But I think now they're going to go into the next step that is, like making it available via also API, also through the hyperscalers. So most of the people can using it. I know they were talking that like it's going to be on Tesla in the next week, and I'm pretty sure many different customers, many different companies, they will start it using it. So again, I think it's simply amazing. I was quite surprised. I didn't expect that. I think it's clear more or less, well, in terms of like a benchmark and leaderboards that right now they are leading this race. Probably in couple of months or in less than a month, we will see a new release. Very likely it can be DeepSeek, because it has been announcing for such a long time that they will release the second version of DeepSeek. But again, I think this is good, and kudos to Elon and all the team, because they are doing a great work.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of competition. And there's also a lot of competition in the AI talent wars. This was also in the news recently, with reportedly offers of up to $100 million being offered by the Meta team. But there was a lot of public announcements as well of employees that did actually make the switch, that formed the new super intelligence team at Meta, but also with OpenAI as well. How do you see these talent wars shaping the future dynamics of where AI?
Well, I'm still waiting for that call from Meta. Not sure why I didn't get it yet, but it will be like a very good offer, 100 millions, right? Well, do you know, like when you think about it, and first of all, I'm not sure if it's true or not. That's the reality. I mean, like this is what some people is talking about, not necessarily needs to be true. So I'm not going to assume that the 100 millions offer is going to be true. First story. But even if it's true, that I don't care, right? When you see all the things that they are on the table, I mean, like when you see, I was talking before about, the geopolitical situation that we are seeing right now, this race between US and also, China to lead the race. And, like how many different interests there are, like on the plate. It's not a surprise. I mean, like it's not even expensive to say like, hey, I'm going to take these 10 different unique scientists that is going to take, let's say, a billion, for example, right? Yeah, because it's 100 millions, 10 people, it's going to be $1 billion. I mean, like if this is going to make you to be or to lead the race, and I'm not just talking about, like creating a new model, because we have seen that, like releasing new model, pretty much everyone is in a good situation to do it. You just need compute, you need data, and you can be there. But if you are thinking about the next leap in the AI race, I think makes a lot of sense. And probably this is what like Meta wants to do. And Meta, the situation is a bit different. It's a bit different because Llama 4 probably was not meeting the expectations that everyone had. But the reality is like everyone who is building with AI on the open source environment is based on Llama. So Llama is by default the standard approach to build, like a open source with AI. But also I think, Mark, it's not about money. It's not about leading this race. It's about, like the legacy that you are going to leave in the history. And I think he wants to leave a legacy, and AI is a bet for him. It's a bet for Meta. It's a bet for him, and he wants to make history in some manner, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. Well, maybe it's also the problem about, like paying 100 million is like you are increasing a lot, like the value across all different people who is building with AI. I was reading the other day, like a comment that, hey, if he's going to pay 100 million, then you have a startup, you want to hire scientists, and like it's increasing, like the offers for everyone. But I think overall, again, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but this is just proving again how important for everyone is being this race, this AI race, to be the first one, to be the or to build the most capable model, and to make history. So I think is what we are seeing today. And again, I think we are lucky that we are seeing this. And it's amazing to see all the things that they are coming in the near future.
Yeah, it's really remarkable and it's truly unprecedented in terms of what we've seen, well, almost definitely in our lifetimes. But for organizations that don't have the amount of capital that the leading hyperscalers, AI labs, or infrastructure companies do, and they're thinking about, well, how do they invest in reskilling all of the people they've got within their organizations and they can't afford these big paychecks, whatever they might be. What advice are you providing to these organizations in terms of how they think about uplifting the skill level of their employees?
Yeah, sure. So one of the nice things about, especially about Gen AI and LLMs, is like, of course, it's getting super complicated. That like you are trying to hire the best talent out there to build these models, but at the same time, using AI has been finally democratized. I mean, like in the past, it was only available for data scientists, ML engineers. I mean, like you really need to know what you're trying to do, right? And right now, not anymore. I remember I did a master on data science 7 years ago. Um, and again, like you need to know what that means: feature engineering, PCA, which is the best model you need to select, why going through an XGBoost or any other, and how even to identify the results and so on, right? Again, it was limited for a reduced number of people. Right now, everyone can start, like, well, everyone. I mean, like, of course, everyone can use an application, but when I'm talking about building, you don't need to be a data scientist. I mean, like, any software developer can go there, can start building stuff, and like generating value. I think for the companies, they need to do a couple of things, right? Or they need to move at two different paces. I think from one side they need to experiment a lot, and they need to fail fast. I think that's the key. And with AI, it's going to happen because I mean, like you are enter in a space of the unknown. What I mean, like, hey, they really don't know how it's going to work. It's going to work well. It's not going to work well, and we are facing like it's completely non-deterministic, right? So I think they need to experiment a lot. They need to experiment fast, and they need to fail even faster. But at the same time, they need to think in the long term. Like, hey, all the things that we are experimenting, if it's work or if it's working, how to scale it, how to move into production, how to start getting value from there. So of course they probably, I mean, like for maybe more traditional companies, of course they need to go out and hire people, but you cannot just build this strategy by hiring people. So you need to leverage on partnerships, the same that you like can or anyone can partner with us, with AWS, or they can, like also what is super important, most of the companies that I'm talking to about how they are, like implementing this AI strategy is about, like a lot of internal enablement, rescaling. So that's the way to go. And of course, it's going to take time. That's why if you are thinking more in the long term, you need to train your people. In the short term, maybe you need to hire, you need to leverage partners and so on. But I agree with you. Probably right now, the biggest challenges for most of these organizations is about people because most of these technologies, they are like super new. I mean, like if we are talking about, okay, I want to build with agents and I need to know about LangGraph, for example. LangGraph has been there for just a couple of years. Not everyone knows how to build with LangGraph. The same with many others, right? So I think it's going to take some time, but yeah, reskilling and also at the same time, probably trying to hire talent is going to be super important.
Yeah, and the risk profile also, I think, needs to change overall. Where organizations previously could get away with being more risk averse, I don't see a future where that's a sustainable strategy anymore. So shifting to a much more bolder way of thinking around change management, which has been very, very hard for organizations that have existed for a long time and haven't been as innovative. I think it's going to be extremely important. Otherwise, the risk is much bigger of being disrupted.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you about another trend, which is open source. Open source LLMs have been surging on platforms like GitHub. Many enterprises still tend to default towards closed source systems. What are your views on the open source versus closed source debate and what's been happening there?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think right now still there is I mean, like if you take the leaders LLMs in the market, we typically talk about OpenAI, we talk about Anthropic, we talk about Gemini and Grok as well. Meta probably right now is not there. Even Mistral that they used to release a lot of open weights model. They're also like building proprietary models right now. So I think still there is a difference between, I mean, like in terms of performance between open source and proprietary models. That's the reality. That's number one. But also, many people has built many things on top of Llama because you can fine tune it, you can customize it for your on purpose. You can do distillation, you can do continuous pre-training, so you can do like many things. So I think at the end of the day, it's kind of establishing the trade-offs, right? You get or you use a state-of-the-art model that just with some prompting is going to be enough. So you can use, I don't know, Claude with just some prompting and it's going to be enough. But of course, it's going to be more expensive and so on, and maybe it's going to be slower. Or you can say like, okay, let's take an open source model, fine tuning and so on. But it's going to take time, and it's not an easy thing. So I think right now most of the companies, based on my experience, most of them they are using proprietary models because I mean like it's faster, it's easier. But at the same time, I'm thinking in the future because cost is going to be one of the key elements. I mean, like right now, I think we are using, or companies in general, they are using LLMs at very low scale. They are using for very specific, use cases and in a very limited manner. When we move into this world of agents, where you will have, not just some LLMs, but you will have like dozens, hundreds of agents running at the same time, running in the cloud, running at the edge, having a very efficient model is going to be key. So here we can have like two different options, or they may have like two different trends. From one side, we may see like LLM providers, like proprietary providers, trying to build super small models that even they give us the option to even fine tune or whatever, and we may see like like super small models for GPT or Claude or whatever. Or we may see customers trying to take open source model, fine tuning for very specific tasks and so on. I think it's also part of the maturity. I think there is a space for almost everyone. It depends on the purpose. Of course, for example, if you are building on top of proprietary models, you have more risk because you depend on the LLM provider. I mean, like if you're a startup and you are building an applications by using LLMs and you're using GPT or Claude, you are still stuck pretty much to the LLM provider. If you're building on top of open source, you have control over the end-to-end of your application. So in the end, it depends on the strategy, but I think there is a space for everyone. And probably I miss to have more open source models because again, we have mainly Meta, mainly DeepSeek, Mistral a bit as well. But I think it would be great to see more players on this space. But I know it's complicated because you need to have access to this data, to this compute, and the business model is complicated. I think it makes sense for Meta because I mean, like at the end of the day, they are training these models, but they are building also a lot of things on top of these models for Instagram, for Facebook, for WhatsApp, and so on. For others, it's still complicated.
Yeah, I think you raise a few important points there. One being around the flexibility, where you just mentioned the startups and where they need to think about which providers they're building on. But you also talk a little bit about maturity, but also scale. And I think scale is especially important because the usage is still relatively low and it's not being scaled down to every application through agentic deployments, that organizations haven't yet got to a stage where they're optimizing workloads and they're really looking at cost and latency. It's happening a little bit, but most organizations are defaulting to the highest reasoning, best performing models. And so we haven't quite got there yet. So it will be interesting to see what happens as we start to see much more prominent use, especially within the enterprise. You also mentioned agentic AI. So everyone has been talking about agentic AI in 2025. I know in my role, it is one of the most requested topics to talk about. What is it? How do you use it? Where should it be applied? Is it at a stage yet where it can be effectively deployed? For someone that's still wondering, what is agentic AI? Can you just talk a little bit about, firstly, defining what is agentic AI? What technology breakthroughs have enabled us to get here? And what are you seeing out in the market with agents?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, like there is a lot of noise, and sometimes when I'm talking to people, they even don't have like a clear idea what that it means an agent, what that it means agentic, what that it means an LLM, what that it means an assistant, what that it means a chatbot. So I typically say like, hey, from one side you have the LLM, right? And with an LLM, you were just like a prompting the LLM, and you were getting a result. Still very manual, right? I mean, like you were asking, you were getting results, but it was like very manual and not super meaningful. I mean, like as soon as you wanted to, optimize and automate stuff, it was not like very meaningful. So from the LLM to move into the agent, and they're like I usually say they're like four main components that makes different an AI agent from an LLM. First is about the reasoning capabilities. And to be clear, you don't need to have a reasoning model to build an agent, but of course it's going to help. It's going to help because with reasoning capabilities, the agent, they can take a problem and they can break the problem into a smaller pieces to address this problem. And this is super important because one of the main problems for LLMs, it was about the capability to, face very complex challenges, right? So I think reasoning capabilities is one of the main aspects of agents. Second aspect is about, gain access to tools. So you are not just using your training data, but you have access to MCP servers, or you can access to different tools to select, okay, tell me which is going to be the weather in San Francisco. So you can just make a call to the weather forecasting API, you retrieve the data, and you augment it with the answer. So they get access to tools. This is the second aspect. Third aspect is about memory, and memory means like they can keep a memory about long-term memory, but also short-term memory about which are my preferences, which are the different steps that I have taken before. So the model, or sorry, the agent is going to adapt about your preference. This is what we were talking at the beginning about hey, when you are using a lot, for example, some model, because they keep information about you, is going to behave much better, right? So agents, they have memory. And the fourth aspect, and I think this is the key differentiator for agent, is about self perception, right? So they can self-reflect about the output that I'm going to provide, and I can define like, okay, do I need to improve it or not? And I'm doing the typical example, right? So let's say I need to summarize the document. Me as a human, I will write the summary, and I'm not going to give you the answer. The first thing that I'm going to do is like, okay, I'm going to read the summary. Okay, it's good or it's not good. If it's not good, maybe I'm going to make some reviews. I'm going to modify some parts, and I will do a review again, right? So you are trying to, analyze and get feedback from the environment. So this is what the LLMs, the agents, they are doing right now. They are analyzing the output, and they start running different iterations. And each iteration, they can go again through different tools, through the memory, and so on. So from the LLM, that it was just prompting and getting answers, we go into an agent that they have reasoning capabilities, they have access to tools, they have memory, and they have this kind of self-reflection. So this is an AI agent, right? That they can perform a specific task. It can be super complex, it can be super simple. What that it means agentic. So for me, and I'm not talking about driving this in an autonomous manner or not. I'm just talking about doing or achieve some goal. Agentic AI well, in general, is when you don't have only an agent, but you have a team of different agents working together. That's why we typically talk about agentic AI systems, where you have multiple agents working, collaborating together to achieve a or a higher complex task, right? So let's say you have like a travel agency. Maybe you have an agent that is taking the calls. You have another agent that is searching on the internet. You have another agent that is booking the flights. You have another agent that is going to finalize the payment. And then you have the agentic AI system that is going to make sure that it's going to orchestrate all these different agents. And of course, this agentic AI system, they will have different levels of autonomy. Some agentic AI systems, they will be like fully autonomous, that I think we are still far from there. Some others, they will require human in the loop. Some others are going to be more like an assistant, right? Like they are executing tasks and they're asking you all the time, like, hey, can you validate? Can you validate? Can you validate? So that's, like the transition from LLMs, agents, and agentic AI.
Really, really good explanation and great to clarify, especially because there's so much noise and everyone's talking about agents. It's in marketing everywhere. It's in almost every advertisement when companies are trying to sell some sort of software that it's agentic. When you look at what organizations are actually doing and actually deploying, what are some of the most common use cases that you're seeing them develop with agentic AI today?
So the most typical is, well, first of all, it's always with human in the loop, and it's mainly about like automating processes, right? So let's say like I need to handle insurance claims, right? So I have a lot of insurance claims that I need to validate. I need to go through the emails. I need to validate how to send it to one place or the other. So in the past, you had to define every single workflow to handle that. With agents, because you can handle like multiple scenarios, you can really like automate it and make it more efficient. So I'm seeing a lot of agents on this part, how to include it as part of the internal processes, to call your internal CRM or SAP. This is what I'm seeing most of the times. Also, I'm seeing a lot of agents to automate or to optimize, like a customer interaction. So let's say like, hey, I want to make an order. I can just put an agent there. So it's going to retrieve the information about who is the customer, information about your preference. They will connect directly through your, don't know, specific profile. It's going to make the order. It's going to make the payment. So I think, most of the companies, they are now there in this space. Most of them as well, more than agents, well, they are building workflows with LLMs in between. Sometimes it's not just even, like having multiple agents, agentic AI is just trying to define a workflow about what it's going to do. And sometimes part of this workflow, there's going to be like a pure deterministic actions, like, hey, if you are identifying this intent, you just have to do this. I'm not giving you any other options. And I think there is still a lot of testing there. But of course, it depends on you. Like, also depends on how much legacy you have. For some companies, it's very easy to create agents because they don't have any legacy, and like they can build everything on top of the new stack. Still, for some others, the problem with agents is that you need to integrate with like a lot of different platforms, a lot of different systems, and this typically takes a lot of time. But overall, most of the companies, either if they are big, they are small, you are talking about the startups, most of them, they are in this space trying to figure out how to start, getting value from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just said deterministic as well. So whether they're trying to deploy agents or build workflows with agents and human in the loop, most of these applications are still deterministic. So fixed rule based, if this, then that. So as an example, if you want to book me the cheapest flight to London, very simple. The agent will go search all the flights, find the cheapest one and book it. Are you seeing any non-deterministic workflows yet? Are we getting there yet?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, for example, in the specific case about, like flights, because when I was, I think it was a month ago or a couple of months ago, I was in Dubai and I was talking actually to a travel agency that they are creating agents actually for booking flights, right? And I like the point that you were raising, like, hey, book me the cheapest flight, right? So if you are using rule base, of course you will take the cheapest one. But let's say that, like the cheapest one is not deporting at the specific timetable that you usually fly, right? Or you only have place on, I don't know, or you cannot select your seat. Or, I mean, like, it can include many other alternatives that if you have to hard code every single option, it's just impossible, right? So I think this is where you can handle agents very effectively, because it's going to come back to you and say again, okay, this is the cheapest flight. Okay, I can book it if you want, but please keep this in mind. And you are taking more and more interactions. So this is what I like about agents, that, like it's going to go, it's going beyond that, right? And this is a problem with, like a pure deterministic options, that they are actually limiting the options. And again, in some scenarios, needs to be yes or no, as simple as that. And especially based on, like the implications and based on the industry. It's not the same about you like a travel agency that if we compare about, okay, I'm going to give you or not a mortgage, or if I'm using, for example, AI to assist the doctor. So it depends on the use case, right? But again, I think that's the power of agents, that they are going to give you more different options.
Yeah, and I think you just raised the doctor one as potentially being a different use case. But because deterministic or fixed rule-based workflows are limiting to an extent, I think sometimes our thinking is limited too. So I was talking to a surgeon recently who is an ENT surgeon, so ear, nose, and throat. And for patients that first go to visit a doctor or a general doctor with a throat issue, he wants to see whether you can develop a technology that will enable the doctor to basically listen to how a patient's voice sounds, and just by all the different acoustic metrics that you can track in a voice, be able to come up with some sort of view of potentially is it high risk, medium risk, low risk, and patients that are high risk, they should be referred to a specialist, versus medium or low risk don't particularly need that attention, because like in a lot of medical diagnosis, early detection is important. And in that example, because there is so many metrics being tracked, it's not necessarily fixed rule based of it is this one, but it is still a little bit dynamic in nature, because it could be a number of different variables, and it's providing a view of a few of these. So it's not saying do this outcome based
Yeah.
input. And that's where I think the technology can start to become extremely powerful.
Yeah, fully agree. And sometimes, like we made a ground assessment on this, because we are all the time trying to, like choose between human or AI. Human or AI. It's not human or AI, it's human and AI. In some aspects, maybe we don't need even to take any intervention. In many others, it will be something that is going to assist us. So I think that's the real power about how to define when we have to use it more or less. But I absolutely agree with you.
Well, let's go a little bit further on this, because on LinkedIn, you've said that partial autonomy wins, that the best or agentic systems keep humans in the loop. Why does a hybrid approach work better in practice? Why does humans and AI result in better outcome?
I think it's also because, again, it's also because of many different implications, right? I think agents, or not talking about agents, just talking about LLMs, that it's the brain behind the scenes for these agents, right? They are much better than us in many different tasks, right? And I think that's obvious. I mean, like, I'm not going to discuss that an LLM is going to do a summarization of the document better, faster than me, or to get insights from there, or to write or to review code. I think that's useless to discuss that. But at the same time, I think in some other aspects, we are better than them, right? But it's also about the implications. I mean, like, when you're taking decisions, you need to assign the square responsibilities. And there's also discussions about, like self-autonomous driving, right? If an accident happens, who is going to be responsible of that? And it goes beyond technology. It's also, like an important reflection we have to make as a society, right? Like, hey, we want to take this risk in the future, like we are going to assign the responsibility to a machine, because if something wrong happens, we need to define what's going to happen there, right? I assume that by driving, like, or by using self-autonomous car, I'm pretty sure the amount of accidents they will reduce, they will be reduced drastically. I'm pretty sure, right? But still, you cannot blame someone, because you are assigning the responsibility to the machine. And this is a shift of paradigm that the society, maybe at some point of time, we will have to assume, right? That's why right now, I think it's still important, the human in the loop part, because again, still models, they hallucinate a lot, they commit a lot of mistakes. So you need to have a person trying to validate if what the agent is doing is right or not. And I'm not saying the person is going to take the right decision, because maybe he or she is going to make a mistake as well. But at least you add, I mean, I think it's about adding different, like layers of security, right? It's like, hey, You add one layer, then another layer, and for example, when talking about like doctors and so on, right? It's a field that I know it a bit, right? And for example, when trying to address different diseases, even many times the doctors they cannot find an agreement about which is the best, for example, way to deal with the person, right? And they need to have a committee, and they need to find the best approach. And sometimes not everyone is going to be agree on that. So I mean, like this is an example that we don't have all the time agreement across almost everything. So I mean, sometimes we can make mistakes, but again, I think like if we include a human in the loop, I think overall is going to be better. But at least you can validate something. But of course, I think as part of the society, and this is part as well of like of the relation with AI. At some point of time, we'll have to take these decisions about where we establish the line that is going to define where we start working on and where we're like leave all the responsibility to the machine. And I think it's a complicated topic, to be honest.
Yeah, it's complicated because ultimately what's being asked for is having a point of accountability. So in a in a scenario where you don't have any technology involved, it's very clear in terms of where a point of responsibility lies, and there's consequences to when things don't go right as well. In a human scenario, but when you start to bring in machines, I think where we're still trying to get to is where does that point of accountability actually occur? Is there consequences? Who bears the consequences? Is there a point of responsibility that's involved somewhere along that chain as well? From a more technology perspective, agentic systems, as they start to become more modular, we are starting to see competing frameworks like MCP and A2A. What are the core differences between them? And do you think one or the other is better positioned for long-term adoption?
Yeah, I think both of them has been a good contribution in general for like the users. I remember NCP was released, I think it was November last year, and we didn't see a lot of traction at the beginning. I mean, like it was released by Anthropic, and MCP, as the same name, like Model Context Protocol, is the same, or we can make the analogy to the USB, right? It's about defining and a standard protocol on how the LLMs they are going to interact with tools, right? So in the past, if you have an LLM and you wanted to call the API from Google Maps, you have to define from scratch how this connection was going to be, to define the schema, to define the keys, to define the output. You had to build everything from scratch. You can still do that. I mean, like you were doing this, you were using this by using function calling, but it was like very, like time consuming, because if you have an agent that is going to call multiple tools, it's taking a lot of time. With model context protocol, you are trying to make this like more efficient. So regardless of the tool, you define the protocol. So you have your server, and then you have the different clients. So the LLM is going to call directly the server, and you always have the same protocol. So doesn't matter which tool you are going to use, that the protocol is going to be always the same. Of course, if you want to define a standard protocol, you need to make sure like everyone is going to adopt this protocol. All the LLM providers, all the different tools, everyone. And it seems like everyone is adopting the protocol. So that makes life much easier to developers, because instead of creating a specific connection or specific routes for every single tool, you just define one through MCP, and it's done. End of story. And again, I think we have seen more traction as soon as we have seen people building agents and so on. So this is point number one about MCP. Where do we put like A2A into the picture? So A2A, that it was released by Google, I think was 3 or 4 months ago. At the end of the day, as I was saying before, right, these agentic AI systems, they are composed of multiple agents. And also you need to define a communication protocol across these agents. I mean, like if I'm a travel agentic AI system and I have an agent that is searching on the internet, how I'm going to take the results to give it to the other agent that is going to talk to the customer or is going to make the payment, right? So you need to define the protocol to make sure that all these agents, they are going to talk in the same language. Or even let's say you have agents built that they have been built on LangGraph, and you have agents on QAI, or you have agents on the cloud, or you have agents on your own computer. So you need to define the protocol. And this is A2A that it was released by Google, but actually it was recently donated to the Linux Foundation. And you have all the hyperscaler. I mean, like, I think right now it's AWS, the one who is responsible for the contribution for A2A. The same that Microsoft is there, the same like Google is there. So I think A2A is going to accelerate the way that you have multiple agents working together. And again, I think this is great, and that's the main difference between MCP and A2A. MCP mainly for tooling, A2A for agents talking to each other.
Yeah, they've got very specific roles to play. We've spoken a lot about lots of different layers around AI, not just from models, tooling, infrastructure. I want to take a step back now and talk about AI in the enterprise. With so many vendors, models, frameworks in play, leaders are often very confused with where to start, how to start, which use cases. And I still find a lot of conversations are coming back to this very point. I know earlier you talked about start with the business problem and work backwards, but a lot of times the question that I'm getting is, but what is a good business problem for AI? Because everyone wants to do something with a type of AI. What advice do you give to enterprises of any size in terms of where should they get started, which use cases, how do they do that?
Well, I'm also get confused with so many tools and so many different technology out there. It's impossible to like be updated with almost everything. I always say there are like three main components, right? So from one side you have to work on the strategy, the people. From the other side you have to define the process, and finally is the technology. I think overall, of course, technology is going to evolve, but sometimes I have that feeling that we have technology of the future to resolve problems for the present. So I don't think right now, overall, right, overall speaking, I don't think technology is going to be a problem. Probably this is the last thing they need to start thinking about, which technology they are going to use. Of course, I think the most important is the use case, and I saw something that is super different to what I used to see many years ago, or at least 3 to 4 years ago. I remember 3 to 4 years ago, most of the companies, they were not able to identify those use cases. They were asking us like, hey, this is my, like a business model, or this is my industry. Can you help me how ML, traditional ML can help me to my business? And yeah, you were identifying use cases for, recommendation, customer churn, fraud detection, segmentation, clustering. It was like very, very specific, right? Right now, most of the customers, they have a list of use cases. They say like, hey, I'm, for example, working on the travel and hospitality space. Right now, I know most of the people is not looking for an hotel through the normal web search, but they are using, for example, ChatGPT, or they are using Perplexity. So top use case for them is like, hey, I'm going to ensure that, like I'm going to be relevant on that space. So because they know their business, and because they know their business, they know like, okay, maybe this is not agent, this is not LLM, this is not AI, whatever, but they know it's something around that, right? So I think they know about the use cases. Of course, you need to prioritize the use cases, and this task is a bit more complicated because typically we see like three main cohorts of use cases. You have everything that is related to customer experience, how to improve the way that we interact with the customer. This is one aspect. The other aspect is about productivity, and it's about, hey, if I'm a developer, how can I write code in a much better way, faster, more efficient? Or if I'm a consultant, how can I create a business plan in record time to include all different information from the customer? So it's about pure productivity. And the other is just about, like pure automation. As I was saying before, how to automate different processes and so on. So I think the use cases there are very clear. I think what is challenging right now for most of the companies is to identify the ROI of these use cases. Like, hey, if I'm creating this assistant to interact with the customer, which is going to be the return of value? I'm going to increase the NPS. Okay, in terms of revenue, what that means to have a better NPS? I just have like happier customers. Are they buying more? So if they're buying more, maybe I can, can make the calculation. What it's challenging is because all these use cases, they are run at very low scale. So because they are run at very low scale, it's super complicated to extrapolate this into high scale and to measure the business value, right? So I think you also need to do some bets, right? And sometimes it's, your instinct, or to have this kind of, a flavor to say like, okay, I smell that maybe this is going to go well or not. That's why you need to experiment, and you need to experiment faster. And then you just need to select some use cases, and you need to start building from there, right? But as I was saying, it's not just building these use cases, but also you need to have like a long-term strategy. Like, hey, as soon as I'm building these use cases, how they will move into production, how I'm going to integrate this with the other parts of my company, and so on. So that's why it's also important to create this, a top-down approach. Of course, everything is going to be built from the bottom up, and you will have developers, you will interact with the different parts of the teams. But I mean, like, if the leadership team is not convinced that this is going to be a transformative technology, and they need to start using it, they need to start, enabling people, they need to start doing all things around it. I mean, like, you are just wasting your time. So again, and again, once you have done everything, yeah, you will start thinking about, this is the technology, this is the other, whatever. But I think these are the first thing that you need to address. And again, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes my recommendation when I'm talking to companies, if they're really struggling to build this strategy, to identify the use cases, of course we are helping the customer, but there are also like amazing companies out there. There are like these consultancy firms that they are doing like an amazing work, because they really understand the different industries. And this is something that I love when I'm sitting, with these consultants. When you're talking about automotive, they know more than anyone else about automotive, or the same for retail, or the same for travel and hospitality. And they're not even talking about the technology. They are talking about the real use cases. So I'm pretty sure they are in a very good position to help the customer to prioritize the use cases and say like, okay, maybe this use case is super, attractive. Maybe you will have this wow effect because everyone is going to talk about it. But in terms of, a ROI, it's not going to provide you a lot of value. So maybe go into this one that is not sexy, but it's going to give you more value, because you are going to reduce, I don't know, millions. Let's say like, hey, you want to migrate all mainframes. Yeah, maybe this is not the super sexy use case or the most innovative use case, but maybe you can save millions there. So I think that's the point at the end of the day.
Yeah, return on investment has been broadly a challenge, and I think it's a rapid shift that we've experienced. Return on investment was difficult when organizations were first moving from on-premise to the cloud, and it took such a long time to get around the idea of utility-based pricing. And now we've moved to this token-based pricing, and like you've said, the use cases are still very small, and it's very difficult to assess with the expected or the previous expected level of certainty around, will this generate a return on my investment? I saw a great research article by Gartner recently, and they talked about organizations should be thinking about investments across 3 different categories, almost like you would when thinking about diversifying a portfolio. The first being return on employee, those productivity-based applications where most organizations tend to start. Then the second being return on investment. And so earlier you shared some examples around where you can currently automate with a human in the loop some workflows, like insurance was a great example. You've got a well-defined workflow and you can automate it, and you can measure already what a rough return on investment would be. And then the latter category being return on the future. So these are more of your innovative bets. You're not sure where it's going to work out. At Amazon, it's how we define what an experiment is. You're not sure if it's going to work, but you're betting on something that's innovative. And thinking about the percentage that you're applying across each of these categories and evaluating that as you move forward. But like you've shared, it's still a challenge. It's not easy, and until organizations start doing more in terms of AI workloads and then understanding, well, what should the operating model look like? How does change management work with how teams are structured? I think there's still a lot of development to happen in this space. Often when I'm talking to customers, what I tend to come back to is something that Jeff Bezos said, I think in 2010, when he was asked about the future of retail. And I'm not sure if you recall this story exactly, but he was asked to predict what's going to happen in the next 10 years in the retail industry. And at that point in time, he had shared it's very difficult to predict, for anyone to predict what's going to happen in 10 years' time. And in fact, I don't think anyone can do it with a high degree of confidence. But he said there is 3 things that I can tell you and I can guarantee for sure. One is that customers will never want to pay more for the products they're receiving. They'll never want to wait longer for their deliveries to arrive, and they'll never want to have less selection. And so he said it's a much surer thing to develop an organizational strategy around the things that you know won't change. And so often when I liken that to AI, it's actually the operating model, it's the data, it's the people, like all of those things that you can almost guarantee won't change, because the models are going to continue to develop, tools will continue to develop, software will continue to develop so rapidly, but it's very hard to develop a solid strategy around that.
I love that one, by the way. As soon as you started to talk about it, I remember the story, and he was so clever. Like, like, I don't want to pay more. I want my ship to be delivered as soon as possible. And of course, I want to have the choice to select, like, across many different options. So I love that one. I love that one.
It's a great analogy. I want to ask about data, because often what I found from my experience is organizations want to prioritize generative AI, or even traditional ML, but very quickly the conversation comes back to data. How important is it to have the right data foundation? What does this mean? And why is this such a challenge for most large organizations, in particular with a lot of legacy systems?
Well, it's I mean, like, it's the root for almost everything, is the goal, right? And this is the challenge that also, like, AI labs are facing right now, about having, like, very good quality data to train their models. I'm pretty sure if they were able to access all proprietary data from, like, companies and so on, let's say, like, like, OpenAI can get access to data from Pfizer, from AstraZeneca, let's say. I mean, like, we could have, like, in the near future, super powerful models. So data, it's all. Don't forget that, like, these models has been trained. Either if it's, like, generative AI model, or it's like a traditional model, has been trained on data. The better the data, the better the output. The main difference traditional ML comparing to GenAI is, with traditional ML, you had control over the end-to-end pipeline, because you were access to the data, you were doing the feature engineering, you were training the model on your own data. Those LLMs has been trained already, so you don't have control over how the model is going to react, because it's not based on your data. Of course, you are going to participate in the very late states, either if it's prompt engineering, RAG, or even if you are able to fine tune it, but still you don't have control over the end to end. But still, it's the same thing. I mean, like, expect to have an output as good as the input data is going to be. So that's why every customer, when they're talking about AI, Gen AI, whatever, conversation turns around data. And something that I observed as well that is quite insightful. When you analyze the customers that has been super successful in the way of adopting LLMs, it's typically, like, traditional companies or traditional industries, like, like healthcare, FSI, insurance, because, I mean, like, they have invested huge amount of time, huge amount of money on the data layer, because for them data was all. I mean, like, if I'm a pharma company, I have to do a lot of research, and everything's going to be based on the data. And I have to be super careful on the data in terms of governance, in terms of quality, in terms of, like, update, in terms of everything, right? And those companies, for them, adopt LLMs was like a supernatural transition. The same for FSI customers, right? So that's why I always say, like, it's quite challenging to start building on top of AI if you have not, like, a clear data strategy. And the data strategy means a lot of things. Means to have the right people, means to have, like your data mesh with your data lake, everything in place, your governance policies. Because otherwise, I mean, like you still have the data across different silos and so on. Yeah, you can build super nice prototypes, experiments, but very likely they won't provide any value. So at the end of the day, like data is going to be all.
What about buy versus build? I saw a recent report, and one was actually produced even by Amazon that I think I saw Swami release publicly on LinkedIn, with how many organizations are building versus choosing to buy applications internally. And there is a much greater rise, particularly over the last 12 months. And I actually expect to see this will continue to increase with organizations that will continue to buy more, just simply because of the rapid pace of development happening by organizations out in the market. What do you see with this trade-off? How should organizations think about it when it comes to buying versus building internally?
Yeah, it's complicated. You're right, and probably the biggest challenge is how fast this technology it's moving, right? So when I'm talking to customers and I'm asking them like, hey, do you have AI engineers or who is building this? It's like, hey, we need to leverage like third-party providers because we don't have the skills in place. I mean, like we are looking for someone building on LangGraph and they don't have an idea, right? So that's why also many customers they take their, I mean, like if they are not building, of course, and they have like a traditional building culture, they need to leverage others because otherwise they are going to be stopped. But I just say like many others, they are just buying solutions because sometimes it's just plug and play and you can move faster, right? I think there is a space for almost everyone. Traditionally, like big enterprises that they require a high level of customization, they prefer to build because they can create specifically their own application for them, right? And also because they have the skills, they have the people, and so on. So the level of building bespoke solutions is better for them. Also digital native companies sometimes because I mean like they don't have the legacy, they have the culture, they are more like a building people. But if we go, for example, to the mid-size market, this market is super competitive. It's super competitive, and don't expect to have people on IT, to have people on finance, to have people across all different verticals, right? So they just need to leverage technology and consume technology in the faster and easier manner. And to be honest, sometimes there is not a huge difference between like having the super bespoke solution for them because actually having super custom solution, maybe this is going to be a blocker in the future to face new challenges. So maybe they are taking more like a buying approach. But again, I think there is a space for almost everyone. But I agree with you because the technology is evolving super rapidly. We see more customers moving into this buying approach sometimes rather than like a building from scratch.
I want to ask you about something else that we're also starting to see with the rapid advancement of AI, and what that's enabling developers and non-developers to really build. And that's this idea of what solo founders or much smaller teams can create today, which is a completely new paradigm shift as well. I've heard so many researchers say that we're soon going to get the first billion-dollar solo founder. But recently, if we take an example with Base 44, solo founder, very, very small team. They're a company that lets users build apps with natural language. They were acquired by Wix for $80 million after just 6 months of building. What does that signal about the future of software creation and which types of founders are best positioned to thrive in a new AI native era?
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think the biggest shift with AI is the time to market. I mean, like if you analyze some of the startups that we are seeing today, like like Lovable, Cursor, and so on. I think Lovable the other day they reached 75 million ARR in just 7 months. That is like the fastest startup so far to reach this ARR. But there is also like or there are also like smaller startups that they are like reaching an amazing like revenue around like 8 millions ARR, 10 millions, 5 millions with just 4 or 5 people that we have never seen this before. And that's because of AI, because AI is going to, enable these companies to build faster, cheaper, and even better. So at the end of the day, they are like more efficient. And the time that it used to take to build an application in the past is completely different to the time that is taking right now. So I'm not saying that, everyone is able to build something. And I think that's a wrong take for this, because sometimes I'm listening to, hey, you don't need to be technical to code. I mean, like, everyone can build an application. And yeah, I mean, like, everyone can run a marathon. Not everyone is going to be able to win it, right? So this is the same thing. I mean, like, of course, with AI, you can build POCs and so on, but this is still a big difference. I mean, like, you really need to know what you're trying to build, right? But what I think it's key here is it's not only to be a developer. It's not only to have like, or it's not only about being like a good engineer that you are trying to build or to found your startup. You also need to have the end-to-end vision. And this is what I'm talking about, startups. I used to talk with a lot of startups around the world. And I always say the same thing, like, yeah, of course you need to have like a brilliant ideas, but almost today everyone has like a brilliant ideas. You need to be able to build the right team, right? And AI is helping into that. Like, maybe you don't need to hire like 20 engineers. You just need like a couple of super good engineers with the help of AI. You need to build quick. And this is again what AI is helping you to build like super quick and to ship even faster, especially in this world. It's not about, building good products, but being the first one that is building the product. I mean, like, remember this Ghibli moment with GPT, and everyone was creating Ghibli images, right? I mean, like, if 2 weeks later there is another provider, that is able to create Ghibli images, nobody will talk about it because they are coming second, right? So I think it's super important. And finally, it's about having this vision, right? About how to build a go-to-market strategy and so on. That's why it's not only about using AI, but it's having this vision. So I think Lovable, they had this vision to do that. The same for Cursor. So I think there is right now the line between where it's a product manager, where it's a product owner, what the line about where it's a developer is super blue, right? And those folks that they are able to have or to keep those skills within the same person are the ones that they are going to succeed. And I think that's why the example about Lovable or Cursor on or so on. And very likely we will see a solo founder with a $1 billion company. I'm pretty sure.
Well, for anyone that is building products today or starting a new company, do you think there's any areas where there is bigger opportunity, whether it be industry, function, or even from a product lens? Where, because you do, I think you work a lot with startups, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you see some areas where there's definitely the most opportunity for disruption?
I think right now, and also, like you need to be clever in the way that, okay, if you want to be a provider, maybe it's not a good business because there are already many in the way that pretty much they are doing all the same, and you need a lot of compute, you need a lot of data, and it's super expensive. I think everything is going to move into the application layer. I think this is where, and the same, I mean, like, it's going to be the same opportunity that there were in the past with SaaS, that, software as a service, that there were like a huge opportunity, especially with the transition into the cloud. I think we are going to see with AA. And they used to say like, no, this is a GPT wrapper. Actually, it's not, because again, the model is one component of something that is much bigger. So I think the application layer is going to be where most of the startups, they will see the biggest opportunity. And this also what LLM providers, they are also trying to cover, right? Many of them, they are building solutions on top of these LLMs, like, for example, Cloud Code or a Canvas on ChatGPT, because they realize that there is an opportunity there, right? It's not only about giving access to the LLM, but about what you can build on top of that. So I think this space about the application layer is the one that will increase more exponentially in the next few years.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree more. Often I see everything being marked as a wrapper, and there are probably some organizations and services that
Yeah,
are a wrapper, but there is a lot that are providing that service-based value. And I think it doesn't do them justice to be described as a wrapper because there is a lot of value in
correct.
that application layer. But on the other side of the spectrum, there's been this whole hype around vibe coding. Um, and an ability to develop applications very quickly. But what are your thoughts on the hype around vibe coding?
Well, everything this was introduced by Andre Carpathy, like I don't know, it was like 3, 4, 5 months ago. Like, hey, I'm not coding anymore. I'm feeling the vibe. I'm not even touching my keyboard. I'm just talking through Whisperer. It's identifying my notes and it's writing the code. Well, I'm not sure if this is by coding. I mean, like, probably the definition is not the best one, but I know it's funny and, it has created kind of or it became like a trending topic. But I agree that, the way that, developers are creating code right now, it's completely different to what it used to be a couple of years ago. I mean, like, the same that, when I started to code 20 years ago, I mean, like, we didn't have like a Stack Overflow. I remember trying to copy some code from books and so on because we were like, hey, this is not providing any value. I mean, like, I don't need to create this from scratch, right? Then you had the internet, Stack Overflow, and you were, taking code from there. So I think over the last couple of years, it's not just generating the code, it's everything, right? Doing the documentation, doing the testing, fixing bugs, everything. So for developers, has changed drastically, and this is by coding. But for me, by coding is when you know what you want to do, right? I mean, like, it's not like I want to pilot a plane and I don't have any idea, or I just put a copilot and I can do almost everything. Actually, it's not. So because at the end of the day, it's not about coding. I mean, like, there are like so many different languages for coding. It's about to have a clear idea on what you have to do. I mean, like, regardless, you have to put a comma or a full stop and a comma, or you have to articulate this right with a specific syntax or the other. The important is what you're trying to achieve, right? And I think for that, vibe coding is going to accelerate a lot. So for me, vibe coding is nothing else than using AI to code faster and in a more efficient manner. For me, by coding is not just, like, just putting a person who doesn't have any idea about coding and say, like, hey, build the next Uber application. And because I don't have any idea, it's going to build an application to me. Yeah, it's going to build an application, but it's going to be like completely useless. It's not going to be scalable and so on. So I like the term, the way that, it has generated a lot of, like, discussions. I did a lot of memes about, vibe coding and so on. But I agree, like, like, after probably, like, a Python and so on, right now, the number one programming language is going to be English, and that's a reality.
Yeah, I think it's been very fun. If I just use a personal example, I'm not a developer. Um, I was having some fun on Lovable and just trying to see the different type of applications that I can make and how far can I get them, just by using different AI tools and also using Lovable as an interface. It was a lot of fun, but ultimately, every single time, doesn't matter which approach I took and which product I was trying to build, I get to a point where I hit a roadblock and I'm like, right, now to make this actually functional and actually provide value and not be something that someone will do within 1 hour, it needs a lot more development work. So it's
Yeah.
not at that point where you can just pick something up and create it without having a deeper level of knowledge. One more topic that I really want to get your thoughts on is around skills when it comes to generative AI. AI is definitely rewiring how we work. And there's a lot of news and articles around this, but I think we're starting to see the realities of how it is starting to shift, how we're working and how leaders in particular are thinking their organizations are going to change over the next 5 to 10 years. What kinds of roles or functions do you think are going to be reshaped the most over the coming years?
Yeah, well, it's complicated, to be honest. I mean, like, trying to predict, like, which are going to be the roles that they're going to emerge, which are going to be the ones that they're going to disappear. couple of weeks ago, I was reading this report. I think it's from the World Economic Forum about the future of jobs for, I think it was like 2030, right? And they're talking about, like roles like, like data scientists, data engineers, AI engineers, everything that it was related to data and AI is going to become, like super important for every single organization. So, I mean, like if you're in that space, or like everyone that has kids that they're going to the university right now, probably they should start, like going into these different degrees. So I think that's a reality. The same, like, like I believe, like, like developers, they're going to keep increasing over time. I don't think that, like the career of the developer is going to end because of AI. Actually, it's the opposite. I think it's going to increase a lot. But, like any specific task that is not providing any value suitable to be automated, of course, eventually will disappear. I mean, like if I have a person just making cold calls to sell something, this is something that is very likely to be automated by an AI agent, right? So think about those specific professions that, like maybe doesn't make a lot of sense in the way that you can use AI to be, like a more effective and so on. Here you have a different consideration, right? That is about, like different countries and different regulations. You cannot say, yeah, hey, because I have AI, I'm going to, like farm an entire team and I will start using AI. For example, here in Europe, it's different. In the US, it's a different story. In every single region, you have different laws that you have to respect, right? But again, I think this report by the World Economic Forum was quite insightful because you were, like analyzing the different, like roles and professions, and most of them you were very likely to predict like, hey, yeah, this is going to be disappear because, I mean, like it's not. I mean, like the person as a person doing this task is not adding any value. So it's the same with, like the industrial revolution or with, like automation through robots, right? Like, hey, you don't need a person to put this specific packets from this point into this other point. I can just use a robot to do that. So I think it's going to be the same thing.
For most people that want to start learning about AI today, what skills should they be learning? How should they get started?
I think also, like the way to learn AI these days have changed over time. If we analyze traditional ML, I mean, the foundations have not changed. I mean, like it's everything related to maths, calculus, algebra, statistics, and have not changed. I mean, like I remember 20 years back, studying or trying to understand neural networks on the paper. So, I mean, like the foundations, they are the same thing, and this is the reality, right? So still you need to go, I mean, like of course, depending on which kind of role you want to take, if it's going to be like more business focused or more technical, but if you really want to deep dive on AI, I mean, like the foundations have not changed. But of course, because this is evolving super fast, traditional learning methods maybe are not working anymore. You cannot start, like following courses all the time because courses get old just in the sake of weeks, right? So you need to be updated with different platforms, with, like social media, reading blog posts. I think that's the new way of learning, to generate alerts with, hey, there is this new release or there is this newspaper, this new paper from Archive. So I think this is how it's working right now. But what I would say as well is like, don't feel because you are not technical that this is not, like for you, or, or like, hey, no, my role is out of the scope or is not going to be affected by AI because I'm building houses. Actually, it's not. I mean, like any single role in the near future, in one way or the other, is going to be affected by AI because, as we were talking before, right, it's going to affect the way that we have our productivity as an employee, right? So AI can be like a booster for productivity, and it's going to affect in many different ways. But of course, like traditional ways of learning, they're going to change. But I will encourage anyone that, hey, if you want to learn with real, like learning with AI, please don't forget the foundations because otherwise you are not going to understand anything.
Yeah, I think you share some really important pointers and advice there. And because it can seem so overwhelming, I think it can also hinder people with how they get started. But I like what you said about multiple modalities, because to get started, there's so many different forms and types of learning, whether that, like you said, be reading blog posts or articles, listening to podcasts, actually doing, trying out the tools yourself. And the tools make it so easy to learn as well. So we've never been at a point in time where actually understanding concepts which you don't know and trying out different methods of doing things have been easier to find out. And like a very simple example, I was on holidays recently and my partner's dad was explaining to me a theorem about how boats are floating on water. And I didn't fully understand it. I put into ChatGPT and I asked it, hey, explain this to me like I'm 10 years old. Or first I did 5 years old and I was like, okay, that's too simple. But there's so much you can do to help start building understanding, and knowledge always compounds over time. And I think that's an important thing to remember. One more question around education just before we wrap up, and that's around kids. I believe you're a father, you've got a couple of kids yourself. It's a very different world when it comes to education, and education has not been disrupted for a very, very long time. How should parents be thinking about what types of skills their kids should be learning?
It's complicated as well. I don't know. I was reading yesterday news from China that they want to introduce as mandatory AI for kids from 6 years old, because they really believe that it's going to be super disruptive, and they need to understand the technology. So the same that, like probably my kids, they won't drive a car because they will be self-driving. I mean, like the same is going to be with AI, but it's going to be different for them because we understand, I mean, like that this is an AI or this is ChatGPT or whatever. So for us, this technology, it's new. We have not lived with it since the very beginning. The same, I didn't grow up with an smartphone in my hand, right? But for them, I remember the other day, like he loves the old one. He loves Cars, the movie, right? Well, he loves Cars in general. He loves the movie and he loves Ryan McQueen. And I used to talk to ChatGPT, to the voice mode, to talk stories about ChatGPT, right? About the movie, about Cars. And GPT already knows his name, right? And it's like, hey, how are you? I'm Ray McQueen. I'm going to have the race. And he thinks that he's talking to like a real person. Like, I don't know if he thinks it's a person, or thinks it's an AI, or thinks it's a machine. But the reality is that he's talking to it and he's interacting to it like in normal manner, right? And I think that's the difference. We understand that, like this is a new technology, but for them, because they are living with it since the very beginning, it's going to be different. So I think education, very likely, it will be disruptive very soon. Of course, we need to understand the limitations because still, like models hallucinates a lot. I've said also many things about, hey, how to create, for example, a map with AI, and it's a completely mess. Doesn't make any sense what it's creating. But I think it's about also identifying the limitations of AI. So I think AI is going to be great for, like studying. And I think right now, I was talking the other day with my cousin who is 17 years old. And he was telling me that he was using AI to create summaries about the different subjects, to identify, like the key relevant points, and it was like super helpful for him. And right now, every single student in the university is using the different tooling that there is. When I was talking before about, like startups that they have grow super fast, there is a startup that they created AI for homework, that I think they did around, like 10 million CAR with just 5 people, because every single student is using it. So I think education will change forever, but of course we need to understand the limitations, where to use it, when to use it, and in which manner to use it. And about, like raising kids, I think it's, like it's training on the job, right? I mean, like, because this is new, we don't know which is the best way to use it. The same that it happened with social media. I think there are some parents that they are crazy, like just taking thousands of pictures of their kids and putting it on social media. I don't think it's a good way to teach their kids how to do these things. So I think, like at the end of the day, to be honest, it's like common sense, as simple as that. It's common sense. And this is what we try to do with my kids. But again, we'll make some mistakes, but I think we need to prioritize common sense regardless of the technology.
Yeah, I agree. And I think balance is important. You just mentioned the impacts of social media that had. I read some studies on the impacts it really had on the whole generation Z or Z, depending on where you are in the world. And because they grew up with social media platforms, they quite got it. They've more than any other generation gotten addicted to short dopamine hits, have much shorter attention
Yeah.
spans through the impacts over time. And so I've really been thinking about this. I saw a study recently by MIT, just on like a very small sample size, and they had students that were doing essay writing. One group were using AI tools and the other were unaided, so the traditional method of Google search with writing an essay, and they were measuring cognitive function. And what was really what really stood out about this study is a group that didn't use AI tools at all. They had much higher memory retention. Their essays were much less generic, much more original, much more creative. They had a greater sense of authorship, like what they created was theirs. And what was even more interesting is this idea of cognitive debt. So the group that was using ChatGPT, when they became unaided, it took them a much longer time to get back to a point where they still had the same level of critical thinking versus a group that was doing the task manually. And we're just getting started. We're just at the beginning of this. So even thinking about topics like deep thinking, critical thinking, I really feel as we move into this future, we're going to need to be much more deliberate about actually deep thinking sometimes before we jump into using a tool for those tasks where it's necessary to continue developing that level of high order thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Final question. If you zoom out beyond the technology, the competition, the funding cycles, what type of future do you hope that AI helps us build and that you're here helping to co-develop?
To be honest, the other day, I was writing. Well, I'm writing a book, and like I was trying to imagine the world 10 years from now, and I reached the conclusion that, well, I was trying to draft three different scenarios. One, it was like a total chaos. The other was like just like a small incremental of like of progress. So we see like a society very similar to the one that we have right now, that with more advance, more quality of life, pretty much what we have seen over the last 100 years. And the third one, it was like a completely new society in the way or how we work, how we make relationships, how we raise kids, how we go to work, the value of money, the value. Maybe we are going to see like like some assets that they are going to become more and more relevant. Like for example, the land, because I mean like even if we have, let's say like we have like a powerful AI that is able or capable to do many things. Of course, maybe some or many roles they will be like not necessarily will have like some level of like of wellness where like some other aspects they are going to become more important. But the thing is like based on the progress that we are having today, I'm not sure if it's going to be like 10 years or a bit more, but I think it's not only technology. I think we have to face some discussions or challenges that they are going to be like very complicated for us as humans, as a society. I mean, like trying to understand that you are not talking to a doctor, or you're talking to a machine, or trying to understand that you are not having a relationship with a real person because for you it's easier to have it with bot. I mean, like this is I don't think sometimes we are ready to that. I mean, like we are not ready. Maybe the people who is like born right now, maybe they're ready because it's going to be the new reality for them. So I think it's going to be like a big shift in terms of generations, right? And probably it's going to be even bigger to the one that like our grandparents had in the past, and that's where sometimes I'm not concerned. I'm thinking about, hey, are we ready or we are not ready? But again, this is just one of the scenarios that I was trying to draft. There is the other that we know, like it will be like incremental advances and so on. And I hope to don't have the total chaos. I hope so. Let's see. It's really complicated, to be honest.
Eduardo, thank you so much for such a deep and thoughtful conversation. I've enjoyed it a lot, and I really appreciate you making the time to talk about so many different topics around AI.
I really enjoy and thanks a lot for inviting me. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Moonshot. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please subscribe to the show and leave a review. It helps me bring on more amazing guests like Eduardo and continue to share bold, thought-provoking ideas. See you next time on the Moonshot Podcast.